Pictured here is my personal hero, Leslie Knope. If you're familiar with the television program Parks and Recreation, you know that Leslie is an unstoppable enthusiast for her hometown of Pawnee, Indiana. Pawnee has its problems, from an uncontrolled raccoon infestation to a terrible obesity epidemic caused by sodas the size of small children, but it doesn't stop Leslie. She never fails to see the potential to make her community better or to throw herself headlong into anything having to do with her community. I feel the same way about my community of Vermillion, and I think it has a lot less going against it. For one thing, all of our raccoons pretty much stay in the sewers, and it's a lot better. So like Leslie Knope, 4 years ago, I ran for city council, and I am also the executive director of a local nonprofit. In those roles, I get a lot of suggestions on what would make our community better. Lots of ideas that someone, somewhere, usually not the person making the suggestion, should be carrying out. And I also find myself asking people what they want. We do surveys and polls and focus groups. I put things out on Facebook to try and figure out the desires of my fellow citizens. And sometimes really important issues come to light, things that we need to work on, like poverty, food insecurity, affordable housing, walkability and bikeability. But other times, the responses really unsettle me, and I found myself asking, why do people want such ridiculous things? Not big ideas that benefit everyone, but chain stores and restaurants and lots of places to accumulate very specific stuff. I've really struggled with the idea that the job of community is to please and appease everyone. Creating community shouldn't be about giving us exactly what we want. If our desires don't contribute to and build up the general welfare, we need to want different things. I know on some levels this is heresy. I'm already cringing thinking about the people watching this on YouTube or whatever and saying, she's not very responsive to her constituents. We've adopted sort of a customer is always right mentality when it comes to community building, and to reject the chorus of I want might seem downright undemocratic to some. But here's the rub. Citizens are not customers. They're not tourists. They're not simply consumers of goods and services, not in a community model. We are all co-owners and co-workers. Community is our collective job, one that we're obligated to do, thanks to the social contract, even in a right-to-work state like South Dakota, and it's time we started putting our communal back into it. In the year 2000, sociologist Robert Putnam wrote an amazing book called Bowling Alone. In it, Putnam talks about the idea of social capital, all the good stuff that's generated every time we do something, from voting to joining the Lions Club to having a barbecue with our neighbors. He posits that social capital has been on the decline for a number of decades and has led to a host of social ills. The theoretical causes of this decline are varied. More people, especially women, are working, and we're all working a lot more. Television created a culture where we were entertained in our homes, and sprawling suburbs and widespread migration have led to neighborhoods where people don't know their neighbors. Baby boomers and Generation X increasingly rejected the institutions of previous generations, sometimes with good reason. Globalization has replaced local business leaders with distant corporations. Other writers have pointed out the loss of public spaces to private commercial spaces, especially in suburban landscape, as another blow to civic and community engagement. Additionally, there seems to be a lingering stigma associated with the very idea of community involvement, a cynical belief that participating in service clubs or local politics is pedestrian or provincial. In a global community where we're more connected to more people and places than ever before, why does our individual participation in our local communities even matter? As it turns out, it matters a lot. Social capital and the web of connections and cooperation created each time we engage with the people and institutions around us can't grow, and we can't receive the many benefits of it without our individual investment. To paraphrase Marshall McLuhan, there are no passengers on the ship called community, only crew. And the benefits we all accrue or alternately lose are really substantial. The consequences of the decline of social capital are evident in a number of realms, from effects on our economy, to our safety, to our children's education, to democracy itself. Ultimately, though, and I would argue most importantly, our emotional health and happiness suffers when we are less active in our communities. Social isolation is a growing problem for many Americans. We are more likely to live alone in the past. We are more likely to live at great distances from our family and friends. Numerous studies on new parents shows that there's increased stress and isolation as they attempt to go it alone without the support of a network that humans have relied on for millennia. There's no lack of research on what contributes to a satisfying life, what makes us happy and what doesn't. More money stops making a difference a lot sooner than you would think. Lots of stuff and passive entertainment doesn't make us any happier, and in fact, can have the opposite effect. Relationships, interpersonal interaction, the feeling that we matter in our sphere, these are the proven ingredients. Engaging in the work of social capital building creates the interwoven fabric of reciprocal relationships that fulfills those needs. When we join a church or a bowling team or an ESA chapter, we meet with people we might not otherwise run into. We begin to share in their triumphs and tragedies, and they do the same for us. The idea that we're all rugged individualist mavericks who can go it alone isn't working for us collectively or as individuals. So we know that diminishing social capital is a problem, and we dislike the results that problem has wrought on our lives. So what now? First, I suggest an attempt on the part of those of us who do recognize this as a problem to adopt a different mindset about what community is and what community does. People believe that it is the job of their community to give them as many choices at any given time as possible. And I think this is a natural desire. Given a Toys R Us catalog and told to pick what she likes, my 5-year-old will circle every item. When they can get away with it, people in power often opt for harems and groupies as opposed to the one. Put a buffet in front of me and I will make bad decisions every single time. But is it the job of my community to be a vending machine that provides me with any product or service I can think of? Press A3 for Whole Foods or D2 for Papa John's? A recent issue of this university's newspaper asked students what they thought our community needed. And if I'm about to refer to something that you said, I apologize. The answers were familiar to me. A Taco Bell, because they liked it better than Taco John's. A Wendy's, because they preferred the fries. Now, there are many places in this town to get a taco, and even more to get fries. But this idea that our specific preferences have become such a driver that given the opportunity to think about the needs of a community where, for example, 1 in 3 people live at or below the poverty line, all these certainly intelligent young people could come up with was a slightly different taco, a slightly different French fry. And while we're pining for the slightly different taco or the chain store we're used to shopping at or a coffee shop that makes a cappuccino like that old place we used to go to, we're missing the opportunity to deeply and authentically engage with our community. This preference pollution, as David George calls it, puts our most shallow desires first and foremost, while the things that we might agree are way more important after deliberation or consultation with our fellow citizens take a back seat. If given the opportunity to think about it, would most people choose that every community be a homogeneous recreation of every other, eliciting a sort of suburb déjà vu where you could be parachuted into any town in America and not know you left home? Would they choose the vending machine over the home-cooked meal? There's something about feeling like we deserve to have everything at our fingertips in one town, on one block, in one building. It's honestly kind of messed up. Whether it's instant gratification, whether in retail and other areas of our lives, really isn't attainable, and it leads to a lot of unnecessary disappointment over trivial frustrations. The Rolling Stones probably weren't the first to point out that you can't always get what you want, but they deserve credit for saying it in the most hummable way. I question whether Mick and Keith have really taken this lesson to heart, but we can follow their words, if not their example. Because objectively, we can see the danger of too many choices and always getting exactly what we crave, not for Puritan reasons, but because it both overwhelms us and creates situations where we choose things we really don't want, especially if we stop to consider the true costs. The hopeful upshot of changing our attitudes about what we can realistically expect from our community, about the role stuff plays in our lives, about what we think will make us happy, is that we can make room for social capital and community building. We have time to volunteer rather than shop. We spend more of our evenings getting to know our neighbors instead of stuck inside our houses. We invest in and enjoy local businesses run by our fellow community members because we realize that having exactly what we want right now isn't necessary or healthy. We can recognize the importance of commerce, but still plan cities that are optimized for every facet of living, not just buying. The transition seems daunting. Civic duty is not a phrase that elicits a lot of excitement. We've ceded this realm to a certain type of person who likes that kind of thing over other hobbies like fantasy football or running marathons. Probably in many people's minds, a very boring person. But in reality, plenty of fun-loving people are doing things that increase social capital every day. They are having ugly sweater Christmas parties in their neighborhood. They're on an intramural volleyball team. Charismatic young people like myself are running for local offices all over the country. But we still tend to view each of these items as separate and unrelated instead of interconnecting parts of this web of community. And while we may pursue the activities that we enjoy with great gusto, we don't necessarily join in on the other parts. Americans talk a good talk about personal responsibility, bootstraps, yada yada, but community success takes community responsibility. It doesn't always mean taking the lead. We need people to show up, to support, to consistently join up and join in. And I know some of you out there are thinking, listen, Pollyanna, your vision of a neo-Mayberry is all well and good, but it's not going to happen. People aren't going to voluntarily give up their stuff and their Google Watches and their brand loyalty just for the sake of attending more community theater and church socials. And it's true. We're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle when it comes to some of the creature comforts that we've come to see as necessities. Not suggesting we need to start churning our own butter or never order from Amazon again. But I'm suggesting that we need to change our mindset to one that is healthier both for ourselves as individuals and for the sustainability of our communities. One that takes community well-being into account when we make decisions about where to put our energy, time, and money. That is far from impossible. In fact, the decline and renewal of social capital is a recurring pattern in our history and one that is ripe for an upswing. One of the reasons? Millennials. I know that bashing millennials is a popular American pastime, even among millennials themselves, but studies have shown they're one of the most service and volunteer-oriented generations in recent history. And one of the chief criticisms of this group, that they put flexibility and family obligations above work, is exactly the kind of sea change that we need to undo the damage the modern workplace demands have made to social capital building. As the frequency of two-income families and the average retirement age have increased, the number of bodies to plan the PTA carnival and man the library book sale has decreased. But a more balanced approach to work-life responsibilities could start to change that. Additionally, technology and the screens that may be partly to blame for making us willing captives in our own homes instead of engaging with our neighbors have evolved in many ways that are bringing people together as opposed to isolating them. Mobility means that we don't have to choose between our devices, which, let's be honest, are not going anywhere, and our community. Rather than replacing in-person social networks, online social networking has the opportunity to enhance community building, creating efficient ways to communicate and organize. With the right attitude, we could be on the precipice of a renaissance in social capital building. I see examples of it in my community every day. Our public library is frequently a hub of multi-generational activity, from kids' Lego club to an active mahjong group. Middle schoolers play Wii in one room, while folks that don't have internet in their homes can use the public computers in another. After many years where small community downtowns have become more and more vacant, our downtown, and many like us, is seeing more events, activity, and investment in public art and public spaces. Stay-at-home moms organize play dates at the park through Facebook. People under 40 are joining fraternal and civic organizations that were in danger of disappearing 15 years ago. Small business owners who see unmet needs are putting sweat equity to meet them, despite the challenges of big chains and online everything, and customers are seeing the value of spending locally. None of this happened because someone on high deemed it so. It happens because of the hard work of people who've taken responsibility for getting things done and who see the value of a strong community fabric. So what is the job of community? Is it to provide us with places to shop, things to do, attractive surroundings to look at? No, although if you have an idea on any of these fronts, a strong community can have your back and help you make it happen. But none of these are the job of community, because community is a job, the job. And I hope that you will help me get to work. Thank you.